Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of BassQuest. Today I'm going to be breaking down and cleaning one of my Lew's reels. This is a Lew's BB2 Pro. It's one of the older reels, but this is a pretty universal cleaning process. I've got some of the newer magnetic systems as well, the centrifuge systems that you see on the newer reels. So if you like this video and you need me to do some other ones, I will. But anyway, let's just jump into this. Alright, now as far as what you're going to need, this is a reel cleaner. It's always good to kind of soak down the reel when you first start out. For the bearings themselves, this is Kingsford lighting fluid. You don't want to use acetone. I found out it'll actually eat into the plastic part of the bearing. So you want to use lighter fluid. It'll clean out any grease and old oil from the bearing and allow you to re-lubricate it. You also need a good pair of pliers. This is a Leatherman. You need something that's not going to split here, so it needs to be a quality pair of needle nose pliers. Something to cut your line. You also need a pair of very fine tweezers. If y'all can see that. What I do with the line, just to keep it out of my way, I'll get it over to the center. Get yourself some Scotch tape. Get a little piece of Scotch tape. Tape that thing up. Make sure you press it in there so that it stays. Alright, now this thing's ready to go. Alright, first thing I do when I have a reel like this that's pretty dirty is I'll take it, and especially in the dirty areas like around this worm gear, I'll spray some of this cleaner to loosen it up along the side plates. Down here, areas kind of the nooks and crannies between your rod and reel, they'll fill up. What I don't do is I don't want to spray it too much around this spool and get it into the line. For one, I don't know what the cleaner is going to do to the line. For two, I don't want it to get back into my actual gearing on this side plate where your grease and things are. I don't want to have to get into that. So I don't want to spray in there. I don't really want to spray too much cleaner into this other side plate where my braking is either. So I'm trying to get it mainly on the body of the reel and the actual areas I need to clean off. Sometimes I get a little bit around the handle, but again, not towards where the grease is going to be. I'm going to go in here and clean the body of the reel as best I can. Get all the major outside edges, just kind of the aesthetics mainly of the reel clean. Reach up under here next to the worm gear, get as much as I can get. Alright, I've got pretty much all I can get there. Now it's time to get the Q-tips. So with the Q-tips, what we're doing is a more detailed cleaning. We're going to get underneath here, especially over the top of the worm gear, around the worm gear components is very important. And a lot of times what you'll have to use is your tweezers actually to get some of the goop, especially out of the little nooks and crannies. You can take these little fine tweezers and actually pull out additional material, knock it off on your paper towel. I'm going to fast forward through a bunch of this so y'all don't have to deal with it. Now that we've got kind of the most of the body of the reel cleaned up, what we're going to do is we got to get in right here. That's your worm gear. So you want to get in there and to clean out some of that grease. You rotate it a little bit, clean out a little more, rotate it a little more, clean it out. What we're trying to do is get all this old grease out of here. Okay, now we've got all the old grease out of here that we can get. What I'll do, got some Lew's oil right here. Take that, put a couple drops in there. Now if you put oil in this worm gear like this, you're going to have to maintain it more often. You're going to have to put oil in there more often than you would grease. However, it's much more free flowing than the grease is, and so you'll have a little bit better performance out of your reel. If anything, if I have to add grease to it, I'll add a little bit and then still add a little bit of oil to it. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and start breaking this down and dealing with the bearings. So first, we got our spool tension knob over here. Gonna loosen that thing up all the way, set it to the side. There's a bearing in there and it's got a little clip that holds it into place. So I'm gonna pull this little clip out. Alright, I don't know if y'all can see that. It's just a little circular piece of metal right there, what it does is that you compress it and it sits in there into a little ring and it holds that bearing from coming out. So we'll take this, we'll put it somewhere where we're not going to lose it because that's extremely important. And we're going to take that, dump out the bearing. I can already tell this bearing's got a lot of grease on it. You can see a lot of blackness. Open up my lighter fluid. I'll toss that bad boy in there, shake him up a little bit. I'm not going to let it sit in there long, but I'm going to let it sit in there for just a minute. That'll give me enough time to pull out another Q-tip, and inside here I'm seeing a lot of grease. This is where the end of your spool hits your spool tensioner. So I want to make sure that's really nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and add my little drop of oil so I don't forget. Small drop right there on the end of that. Pull our bearing out. Okay, we'll drop him right on this paper towel, and I want to inspect it. So I'm looking at this bearing. I'm still seeing a little bit of grease on it, so I get in here with the Q-tip, and any thicker grease or crud that's built up on there, I want to clean that off of it. Try to run it a few times within my fingers, and we'll toss it back in there. Wring her out, put him on that paper towel, dry him off really good. I don't want that lighter fluid getting down into my grease. I'm just going to sit that bearing back into its little spot there. Reel around. You got to kind of work it to get around the drag right there, but now I can take this little retainer piece again. I'm gonna get that dude, stick it in there. Now this takes some finagling. There's no really perfect way to do it, but you gotta just kind of get it down into there on one corner and get it started, and then bend the other side. It's just one of those things you're gonna have to do. All right. Nice and easy. You got it back into there. It's seated. You want to make sure it's seated all the way into place. First thing I'm gonna do is I want to put a little drop of oil in that bearing. Don't want a lot. You don't want to over oil a bearing. That can affect your performance as well. So now I'm going to tighten this back down. I try to do this in steps also. So now I've got that. Now I'm going to go ahead. On this particular reel, there's no screw to take off the side plate. So what you do is you just take your thumbnail, pull that out, and it'll lift up. And it'll do about 1/8 of a turn. Now I've got my side plate off. I'm going to go ahead and dump my spool. This spool is actually covered in old grease. And that's what I figured based on what I found on the side plate. So I know it's going to be in my other bearing here. There's actually a bearing on this spool as well. This is going to be pretty universal for loose reels as far as how to do a good cleaning. So I've got that. Got my grease off of it now. Clean around this brake system. This is your your centrifuge brake system right here. So I want to clean around it. I want to deal with this side plate first. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I can see there's a lot of grease, where there should be oil on this little piece of brass here that runs around here. That's what your braking runs up against, and that's what helps your reel perform. So I'll need to get that off. I'm going to go ahead and shoot myself a little bit of cleaner in here. Get in here with this Q-tip and just clean all that crud out of there. I want to clean the side walls of that brass really good right there on the top. You want to do this pretty often. You want to take this side plate off on these centrifuge brake systems and clean all these things pretty often. It only takes a second to pull the side plate off and kind of get with that. But now that I've got that all clean, I need to deal with this bearing because I know it's got grease in it. I could see it's kind of piled up. This one has like an octagon shape, little retention piece of metal just like the other one. So in order to get into this one, most of the time, even with those little fine tweezers, it's pretty hard for me. So I'll take a knife, and all you gotta do is, you don't apply a lot of pressure, but you find the end of it here. So I got it right there. Put your finger so it doesn't fly anywhere, and just lift, barely apply any pressure, and boom, now I got one corner out. I'm gonna keep my finger there. I'm gonna get my tweezers and pull that the rest of the way out. So now I got it. Just a little bit different. It's like an octagon shape. I'm gonna put that to the side. All you gotta do is turn, drop that bearing out. Tons of grease on it. Throwing it inside my lighter fluid again. I got that over there, and that gives me time to deal again. I want to clean out this area where that spool is actually hitting. That's how your spool tension works. So I want to clean all that out really well. Main thing is I want to get the grease out. The grease is not what you want on that part of the reel. What happens is over time, the reel gets wet, that oil moves around, it'll actually pull grease from this other side over here into these components, and that's what slows things down and gets them to where they're not running properly. So now I've got that cleaned out. Again, I need to add a tiny drop of oil where that spool is gonna touch over here. So I got that oiled now. Now I'm gonna look at my bearing. I can already see, man, that fluid is a different color. There's a lot of grease on this thing. One of the dirtier reels I've worked on for a while. All right, get that. Now I've got the Q-tip. I'm getting all the excess grease that I can see. I'm gonna drop her back in there. Roll it around. I'm gonna make sure that lighter fluid actually gets into the bearing. Pull it out again. Actually run it a couple times. And I'm gonna sit here and dry it off again. On some of my reels, I've gone to that spool speed bearing, and oh my gosh, that makes a big difference. But you do the same thing in order to replace the bearings. It's a really easy process to replace the bearing on your reel as well, on these luge reels like this. I'm gonna go ahead and stick it back into the slot here, and then I gotta get this little octagon piece. We're gonna stick it into place. Once again, you just want to get one side going, hold the other side with your finger, and then push it into place. It's real easy to get that one. That one's much easier to do than the circle one. So now I need a little bit of oil in my bearing itself. Got that. And what I also like to do here, this will keep your reel noise down on a luge reel. Take a little bit of oil, put it on a Q-tip, a very small amount. We're dealing with like not even full drops of oil. And run that on the brass. That'll keep all that running together super smooth. So boom, we got that. Let's go back over to our spool. These spools, what they have is they have a little pin. One end of the pin is smaller than the other. You see this is the bigger end, so this pin's gonna come back out this way. So now I'm gonna go back to my quality pliers that we were talking about before. Set that on there. You gotta be real careful with the spool here. But I got one end of my needle nose on that narrower tip and the other end is off of it, so I can press with my pliers, and what that does is it pulls that pin out. So now all I gotta do is get a hold of the pin, you got a hold of it, pull it out. I just leave it connected with my pliers usually. Alright, so what that does is now I can just dump that bigger bearing off of there. The two smaller bearings are the same size. The bigger bearing is on the spool. I recommend doing this in the order that I'm doing it here now though, so that you don't ever have a lot of the components loose. It keeps all the gears together to where you don't have to end up taking the reel down. And we're just gonna dry it off again, same process. Once that's done, we're gonna take this again, slide it back onto the spool. All right, so now we're gonna get this pin back into place, and this time we're gonna do it quite the opposite. So we gotta get it started in there, but just opposite, and just slowly press it into place. You don't want to press too hard. This is something that you do with a lot of control, but you end up wanting that thing to be even. So that's stuck in there really good again. What we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of oil on that bearing. Very small touch of oil on the spool itself on both ends. Let me see if I can move my fingers here. We got a little bit of oil here, a little bit of oil here. And this is what happens if your tape comes off. Definitely don't want this to happen. So now, once we have all this done, I want to get in here and look at this frame one more time. I'm going to clean up everything that needs to be cleaned up on this interior of the frame that I couldn't get before. Alright, and what I'm going to do with the clean side is I'm going to go right there where my spool contacts, clean that really well. I'm going to go where my spool contacts is opposite side, clean it really well. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to slide the spool back into place. Alright, when it seats, you'll feel it. It'll seat in over this other side. Sometimes you gotta have to play with it a little bit. But now that I've got that, I can go ahead and put my side plate back on. Same thing, use your thumb, set that thing in place. Look at this. Very nice. Look at that, still spinning. And that's without the spool speed bearings. They'll actually do a little better with the spool speed bearings on there, but it's still spinning. Boom. Like I said, if you feel the need, you can put a little bit of grease in that worm gear. If you're a guy that doesn't tune your reels or play with them a lot, that's probably a good idea, just so that you don't ruin your worm gear. However, in my case, I want the maximum performance out of there, so I'm going to go ahead and just put oil in that worm gear. If you got a problem with the paddle, you can put a little bit of oil on that, but other than that, that's pretty much all you need to do. Alright guys, sorry the light's fading fast over here, One thing I like to do after I clean a reel, like I just did this one that y'all saw, what I'll do is I'll adjust my braking. But one thing you'll notice, a freshly cleaned reel will actually be smoother, and so you'll have to a lot of times adjust your braking a little harder than normal so that you can actually cast. So you want to take a few kind of short pitches to get used to it before you get going. Otherwise, you're liable to get yourself a big bird's nest. But
do you realize you're in PJ pants?
I am in PJ pants, and I'm proud of it. You can't clean reels unless you're wearing PJ pants.
Oh man.
But once you get used to it, you really send that thing. This is some like really junky line I stuck on here too, so. But anyway, hope y'all enjoyed that. If you did, make sure you share it with your friends. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below if you'd like to see me clean some of my other loose reels. I've got some Super Duties, some like Tournament MB style reels, and even some of the higher end reels like the loose lights. But I'm gonna get back in there and take a look at some of the other ones right now. So anyway,
eat your dinner.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat my dinner. Peace out.